Hello and welcome. I am Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching Newsnight on DD India, your primetime destination for news and bespoke analysis. It's good to see you again this Friday evening. Right, on the show tonight, the Tokyo Olympics opened a few hours ago with a ceremony reflecting a games like no other, walking a fine line between celebrating the feats of the world's best athletes while acknowledging the global hardship caused by the coronavirus. Postponed for a year, organizers were forced to take the unprecedented step of holding the games without fans as the pandemic continues to take lives around the world. Now, the new stadium, built on the same site as the one used for the 1964 games, was nearly empty, with less than 1,000 people, mostly officials and journalists, watching from the stands. President Emmanuel Macron of France and US President Joe Biden's wife, Dr. Jill Biden, were among the few global leaders who attended the ceremony. Now, a total of 127 Indian athletes across 18 disciplines are taking part in the Olympics. It's the biggest ever contingent India has sent to any Olympic Games. Also on the show, we take a closer look at the intersection of natural disasters and climate change. Germany, Belgium, China, all are battling floods. The Chinese government calls the deadly flash floods a once in 5,000 years event. Meanwhile, in Europe, scientists are wondering how such damage could happen in some of the world's wealthiest and most technologically advanced countries. This despite major investments in flood forecasting. We ask, could climate change have fueled the disasters in Europe and China? If it did, what might that mean for our future, yours and mine included? And is global warming making extreme weather events worse? Plus, news and updates from India and the world. All that and much more coming up over the next 1 hour. But first, as always, the headlines. Tokyo Olympics gets underway. Indian athletes Mary Kom and Manpreet Singh lead the Indian contingent at the opening ceremony. PM Modi catches a glimpse of the event. Sports Minister Anurag Thakur cheers for Team India at an event held at the National Stadium in New Delhi. President and Prime Minister wish Japanese Prime Minister Suga all the very best for the Games. At least 50 dead in Maharashtra landslide. Heavy rains caused massive floods in Raigad, Ratnagiri, Palghar, Thane and some other districts. Indian Navy mobilizes teams for relief and evacuation. Prime Minister Modi condoles the deaths. Home Minister Amit Shah says government is extending all possible help. Death toll in China, floods rises to 56. Zhengzhou, the capital of populous Henan province, bears the brunt of extreme wet weather in central China, receiving the equivalent of a year's worth of rain in just a few days. Rescuers struggle to reach villages cut off with no access to fresh food or water. Maldives Foreign Minister Abdullah Shahid visits India in his capacity as the President-elect of the United Nations General Assembly. Called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails PM's vision of a reformed UN a public address. Also holds talks with External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar. The U.S. announced Secretary of State Antony Blinken's first visit to India on 27th and 28th July. Blinken will meet External Affairs Minister and the NSA during his visit. Discussions likely to focus on recovery from COVID-19 pandemic, the Indo-Pacific, Afghanistan and cooperation in the UN. Opposition ruckus causes repeated adjournments of both houses of parliament. First week of the monsoon session, a near washout, many key bills stuck. The BJP accuses the Congress of stalling parliamentary proceedings. Shantanu Sen of the Trinamool Congress suspended from the Rajya Sabha for the rest of the monsoon session for unruly and unbecoming behavior. And Jammu and Kashmir police averts a cross-border terror plot, shoots down a drone carrying an improvised explosive device material weighing 5 kilograms in the border area of Jammu district. First up, the much anticipated opening ceremony of the 2020 Tokyo Olympics that took place today.
Cheer for India, cheer for India, cheer for India.
Now 26 team members marched representing India, and PM Modi as well as Sports Minister Anurag Thakur cheered Team India as world champion MC Mary Kom and Indian hockey team skipper Manpreet Singh were the flag bearers who led the contingent at the Japan National Stadium. Take a look at this report to know all about the opening ceremony.
The Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympic Games finally kicked off today with a grand opening ceremony at the National Stadium in Tokyo amid the shadow of COVID-19 pandemic. The number of athletes and officials attending the ceremony was kept low in view of the coronavirus infection. The sky over the National Stadium in Tokyo exploded in indigo and white as fireworks marked the start of the opening ceremony, celebrating the world's best athletes set to compete among the pandemic. 20 Indian athletes represented the country in the opening ceremony of the Games. Boxing great and 6-time boxing champion MC Mary Kom and Indian hockey team skipper Manpreet Singh were the flag bearers at the Japan National Stadium. President Ramnath Kovind has conveyed his best wishes to the Indian contingent at the Tokyo Olympics on behalf of all Indians. In a tweet, President Kovind wrote, "An entire nation's hopes and prayers are with the Indian contingent at the Tokyo Olympics. I convey best wishes to you all on behalf of all Indians. I am confident that you all will excel, win laurels and make our country proud." Prime Minister Narendra Modi has extended his best wishes to our dynamic contingent as he caught a few glimpses of Tokyo 2020 ceremony. Prime Minister has also extended his best wishes to the Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga for Tokyo 2020. Union Minister for Youth Affairs and Sports Anurag Thakur along with eminent sports persons also wish the Team India all the very best.
पूरे देश की निगाहें हैं। आज तक का सबसे बड़ा कंटिंजेंट 127 एथलीट्स का हमारा इस बार टोक्यो ओलंपिक्स में पार्टिसिपेट करेगा। सरकार की तरफ से माननीय मोदी जी के निर्देश पर किसी तरह की कोई कमी नहीं रखी गई। वी हैव प्रोवाइडेड एंड टू एंड सपोर्ट, फुली वैक्सीनेशन टू एवरी एथलीट, और उसके साथ साथ देखा जाए जो टॉप स्कीम है उसका सोच ही ये थी, टारगेट ओलंपिक पोडियम स्कीम, कि किस तरह से अपने एलीट एथलीट्स जो हैं उनको मौका दिया जाए बेस्ट कोचिंग का, बेस्ट एक्सपोजर का, और जब वो अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर किसी भी चैंपियनशिप में पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं तो भारत के लिए मेडल जीत कर लाएं।
However, some of the events were already in action today. Archery was the first event where Indian athletes took part. Indian archer Deepika Kumari finished 9th with a score of 663 after 12 intense sets in the women's individual ranking round on the first day of Tokyo Olympics 2020. In men's ranking round, Praveen Jadhav finished with a 54 at the 31st position and Atanu Das finished at 35. Sports Desk, DD India.
Now a very strong contingent of 127 Indian athletes is competing at the Tokyo Olympics. Take a look at some of the Indian medal hopefuls. Fans wonder, will India win more medals than the London Olympics?
The Tokyo Olympic team of Indian athletes has left no stone unturned in its preparation to scale new heights of success in the upcoming mega sporting extravaganza. This time, Indian athletes have been provided high-level training in the country and abroad in the guidance of reputed coaches. All efforts have been made to ensure that these athletes bring the maximum number of medals for the country. A total of 126 athletes, the biggest ever contingent India is sending to any Olympics. The 69 cumulative events across 18 sporting disciplines that India will participate in is also the highest ever for the country. The top contenders for medals in Tokyo Olympics are badminton player PV Sindhu, boxers MC Mary Kom and Amit Panghal, wrestlers Bajrang Punia and Vinesh Phogat, Neeraj Chopra in javelin throw, Manu Bhaker in shooting. Moreover, Indian men's hockey team is a prominent contender for medals in Tokyo Olympics. From 1900 to 2016, India has bagged 28 Olympic medals, which include 9 gold, 7 silver and 12 bronze medals. So far, India has won the maximum number of medals in hockey. Indian hockey team has won 11 medals in Olympics, which include 8 gold, 1 silver and 2 bronze medals. Apart from this, India has won 4 medals in shooting, 5 in wrestling, 2 each in badminton and boxing, and 1 medal each in tennis and weightlifting. The 1952 Helsinki Olympics is very special for India. That year, Khashaba Dadasaheb Jadhav won the first individual medal for India. Jadhav won the bronze medal in the freestyle 57 kg category of wrestling. In terms of the number of medals, the 2012 London Olympics have been the most successful for India so far. India bagged 1 silver medal and 4 bronze medals in 2012. Sushil Kumar in wrestling and Vijay Kumar in shooting won silver medals for India that year. Apart from this, MC Mary Kom in boxing, Saina Nehwal in badminton, Yogeshwar Dutt in wrestling and Gagan Narang won bronze medals in shooting. India's performance in the last Rio Olympics was disappointing, and India had to be content with only 1 silver medal and 1 bronze medal. PV Sindhu won a silver medal for India in badminton and Sakshi Malik won a bronze medal in wrestling. This year, India is a strong contender for medals in badminton, wrestling, boxing and shooting. Sports Desk, DD India.
All right, time now for our In Focus segment, in which we are discussing about largest ever Indian contingent at Tokyo Olympics. And joining me are 2 very special guests, Adil Sumariwala, President of the Athletics Federation of India, an Olympian himself and an Arjuna awardee too, and Rakesh Rao, senior journalist. Gentlemen, welcome to News Night on DD India. Mr. Sumariwala, now I'm told there are many firsts to Tokyo Olympics. Now I'm told this is the first Olympics to lay emphasis on gender equality. There are more women participating this year than any other Olympics in the past. In fact, some teams have more women members than men. Also, this Olympics we saw women join men as flag bearers at the opening ceremony. A welcome change, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's time for gender equality. I think everybody's moving towards the International Olympic Committee, all the international sporting federations, the national sporting federations, and in time to come, you'll probably always see more women than men, because women will have at least 50%, and then they will be able to also have, for example, the European Council, because there is a 50% quota, and they can also compete and fight elections in the open category. There are more women on the European Athletics Council than men. So it's going to happen, and it's a good step. I'm sure that there are many countries who are still far behind in gender equality. There are a lot of countries in the Middle East that are still far behind in gender equality. But I think it's a welcome step.
Absolutely. Mr. Rao, there are a couple of other firsts as well, and it was a sight to behold to watch Mary Kom and Manpreet Singh lead the Indian contingent at the National Stadium in Tokyo. But that apart, there are two more firsts I want to ask you in particular. Now, athletes are expected to raise social or political issues over the next fortnight as the IOC, the Olympic Committee, has allowed athletes more freedom of expression at the Games, but demonstrations of any kind are a strict no-no. That's number one. Number two, medals made entirely from recycled metal. Remember, in the last Olympics in Rio, only a third of the silver and bronze medals were made from recycled materials. So both welcome changes again?
Absolutely. See, in the kind of world in which we live and breathe, we have to be aware of the environment and the kind of damage that is being caused across the globe, I'm saying. So this is a wonderful step. And I mean, the stage doesn't get any bigger than the Olympic Games for you to underline the fact that how important it is to recycle waste. And that too, if you can waste electronic stuff, I mean, the kind of wastage that creates. But if Japan could, just invite the locals to just come forward and give whatever electronic waste that they had, a lot of smartphones and stuff like that, and they have used it to a great extent. Now that doesn't mean that particular, those 5,000 medals, they have anything which is, the metal aspect is not there. Yes, it has metal. It has 6% of gold, and the silver medal, the silver used is pure silver. So the kind of stuff that is used is quality again. But what they've done is, that is for me a novelty, because I never imagined that the metal used from the electronic waste could be so beautifully used. And of course, the Olympic medal, probably the biggest medal on this planet, is awarded during the Olympic Games. So I'm sure that's a fantastic thing, from the organizing committee, and the thought that has gone into it, the process that has taken place. And secondly, using sports or the platform of sports to protest or to, say what you want to say, seriously, I am not in favor of that. I think sports is apolitical.
Right.
And that is where I feel, color, creed, where we talk about gender equality, sports does allow you equality, isn't it? I mean, you show me, where is it that, in what discipline is that, the rules are set like that. Mm-hmm. If you say that a shot put, for a lady is slightly lighter than it is for a man. Now, if you want to say, no, we want the same one, probably the day will come when both the shot put will weigh the same. Now, what I'm trying to say is, it is out of choice. The day you want equality, that will be there. But it is not that if it is uneven, there is inequality. Right. What I'm trying to say is, sports allows you that. So whatever decisions they've taken, no protests, great. That is the way it should be.
Right. Fair enough. Point taken.
Yeah.
Mr. Samariwala, now let me address the elephant in the room. Now, these games are being held in the backdrop or in the shadow of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, 100-odd people have tested positive at the Games Village, and their numbers are only going up. Now, fans were conspicuously absent from the opening ceremony in Tokyo. It was a near empty stadium, only officials and journalists watching from the stands. TV screens and social media are the only way to catch the action happening in Tokyo. How is that going to shape this year's games? And as a sportsman yourself and an Olympian at that, do you think less fans would put less pressure on the athletes? Is that good? Is that welcome?
See, I think fans being there, not there, is being, a lot is being made of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should waste too much time on fans being there or not there. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's good to have fans there. Will it really make a difference? I don't think so. If we've been watching the run-up to the Olympic Games, most of these events have been held without, whether it was a diamond meet, whether it was the permit meet, whether it was the Continental Cup, and the amount of records that have been broken, the performances that we have seen, more records have been broken before Tokyo than were broken before Rio. So I don't think fans being there or not is really going to affect the performance. And if you look at Indian athletes, at most times there are very little fans in any stadiums except for cricket. So our athletes are used to having very little or no fans. And again, I think the most important aspect we forget is when an athlete, say, is shooting or archery or is going to run a 100 meters, the minute the athlete gets into their position, I don't think the rest of the world matters to them. They are focused on one single point. Either it's the target or a point beyond the finish line that they're supposed to reach. And I don't think shouting, screaming, whatever of the fans, I don't know in other sport whether it does or not, but at least in my sport, makes very little or no difference. So I think we should put this behind us, this fan business. I think everybody's making too much of it.
Right. Before I come to the Indian medal hopefuls, I want to ask a couple of questions to you, Mr. Rao. Now, is it, in your estimation, proper to call these games the so-called recovery games in view of the pandemic? And does it give the spirit and spectacle of the summer games, a new meaning? Also, the medal ceremony is going to be different this year. No one will put actually the medals around the neck of the athletes. They will have to do it themselves. Your thoughts?
Well, we are living in different kind of times now. So let's not, expect a repeat of what happened, say, in 2016. As they say, desperate, situations demand desperate measures. That is exactly what is happening. All these are not out of choice, but then this is what the demand of the day is. The times demand that you have to stay away from the person who's otherwise meant to present you an award, like a medal or a bouquet or a little teddy bear or a little stuffed toy. But what I'm saying is that, see, these things you have to have because you have to ensure that lives are not put to risk. That is the major thing here. It has nothing to do with protocols, of course. If you go by the protocol, then you don't change it at all because you stick to them. Here, the protocols have been changed, and rightly so, and why not? And then your other question was, sorry?
About the games being dubbed the recovery games. And how is
recovery games, all right.
The image of the summer?
Yeah. For me, I think what they have done is, and I truly appreciate that Japan has made it very clear to every athlete across the globe, is that you could be alone. You had trained all alone, but you are not away from us. We are all together in it, and we are going to come out together pretty strong out of this entire pandemic or whatever. These games are in a way celebration, yes, but we could see that, what we saw in the opening ceremonies of, say, 2012 and 2016, it was nowhere close to that. The glitz, the glamour, and the noise or whatever, yes, it had to be sober because just look at the global mood. It is sober. And then we need to also underline the fact that the very beginning of these games, it serves as a sense of relief to a lot of people. Because the athletes who have checked into the games village, they were not sure whether the games will actually happen because the statesmen coming out with, we could decide even at the last minute to call off the games. No, at least that we have crossed that particular, hurdle or that fear or that apprehension. Now it's time because the action has already started. So to call it a game of recovery, I said, yes, recovery, yes. But then I think it's more about relief and it's time to rejoice. So it's a little muted, but then I think it is just in the fitness of the things.
Right. I'm running out of time. So very quickly, one last question to both my guests, starting with you, Mr. Samariwala. This is about the Indian medal hopefuls. Most frequently asked question, everybody wants to hear from you. Do you see the possibility of India surpassing or, the London Olympic medal tally or, a double-digit medal haul this time in Tokyo? Also, in which disciplines is India expected to shine in Tokyo? Your thoughts?
I've never answered that question before. I'm not going to answer that question.
Fair enough.
I do not believe in putting pressure on the athletes to get medals. Each athlete, I would say, has done his or her best if they perform better than their personal best performances. And if that happens, I would be very happy. And if that can get us more medals than we won in London, so be it. From the preparations that have happened, I can talk about preparations, I can talk about the journey.
Sure.
I think this is the best preparation in spite of COVID. I think the government, the Sports Authority of India, the federations, the coaches, the total infrastructure, the total ecosystem has supported our athletes. Our athletes have got every single thing that they asked for. There is really nothing that they did not get. And now I think it's time for the athletes to perform. They must go out there and give their best. And all we want is, at least I want, is them to perform their personal best. And if they do that, I'm sure we'll come back with many medals.
Absolutely. Mr. Rao, the last word goes to you. Your thoughts on the medal hopefuls?
Well, we have a few, but then as you know, like Adil himself has just underlined, that let's not go too much into the numbers. But yes, I would like to just say one thing here. From London, we fell from 6 to 2. Now that was a downward slide, which we all, I mean, we tend to forget that. Now we are happy raising the number from 2 to 6 again, and we'll be happy. It should have been from 6 to 8 and 8 to 10. That would have been a great number. Right. But having said that, now we can't, you know, like undo whatever has been, you know, like whatever has already taken place. But to answer your question, a medal for me, I mean, you know, the number, anything say around 5 and above should be a pretty satisfactory number, because I don't expect too much, because a lot has been made out of this double-digit stuff. If the shooters shoot, you'll get 10 from shooters, okay? But if they don't, if they are not on target, you can get 1, you can get none.
Right.
So that is the range that we have here. But I think 5 for me will be a pretty fine number.
Right. So on that note, may I thank both my guests once again, Mr. Adil Sumariwala and Mr. Rakesh Rao, for making time for us here at DD India. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right. And before we move on, here's some more glimpses from the Tokyo Games. Take a look. All right, we'll try to get that story in just a bit, but moving on for now. Tragic news coming in.
Ending the long wait, Tokyo Olympics 2020 saw a marvelous start. The day started with jets from the Japan Air Self-Defense Forces aerobatics team, Blue Impulse, which drew the 5 Olympic rings across the Tokyo skies. Colored in red, yellow, green, blue and black rings, the smoke filled the air with the color of Olympics. Meanwhile, dozens of Japanese braved scorching heat and heavy security to get a photo in front of Tokyo's Olympic Stadium. Despite roadblocks and an hour-long queue, people waited to get their chance amidst the crowd. In the line of meetings on the first day of the Games, Japanese Emperor Naruhito met a number of foreign dignitaries who were in town to attend the opening ceremony of the Tokyo Olympics, including US First Lady Jill Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron. After the Emperor gave a speech, each foreign leader spoke with Naruhito briefly on their way out before leaving for the opening ceremony. In addition to Biden and Macron, Prince Albert II of Monaco and Polish President Andrzej Duda were also in attendance at the Imperial Palace. Also, French President Emmanuel Macron met International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach. Macron's 2-day trip included a reception with Emperor Naruhito before the opening ceremony, and on Saturday he is looking forward to have talks with Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. The French president is one of just a handful of foreign dignitaries in town for the opening ceremony after organizers stripped back the usually lavish affair and limited attendance. Kenyan 10,000 meters runner and 2019 New York Marathon winner Geoffrey Cambo has pulled out of the Tokyo Olympics due to an ankle injury. The 28-year-old is a 3-time world half marathon champion and previous world record holder, and had hopes of a medal in the 10,000 meter after winning the national trials. The injury comes after he was hit by a motorcycle while training near his home in June last year, suffering a fractured tibia. Belgium's Jelle Geens will miss the Olympics men's individual triathlon on Monday after testing COVID-19 positive, but is still hoping to travel for the mixed relay on July 31st. Geens, 28, is the first Belgian to be affected by COVID-19 restrictions and had been considered a medal contender. Belgian National Olympic Committee says that Noah Servais has been sent to Tokyo as a possible replacement for the relay if Heens does not make it. Bureau Report, DD India.
Right, moving on, tragic news coming in from Maharashtra, where at least 50 people have died due to landslide caused by floods. Heavy rains for the last 2 days have caused massive floods in Raigad, Ratnagiri, Palghar, Thane, Sindhudurg, Kolhapur, Sangli and Satara districts. And Prime Minister Modi condoled the loss of lives. He announced an ex gratia of 200,000 rupees for the next of kin of those who lost their lives and 50,000 rupees to those injured. Meanwhile, the Indian Navy has mobilized rescue teams for flood relief and evacuation.
Incessant rain over the last few days has thrown life out of gear in Mumbai and several other parts of Maharashtra. Over 50 people died in different landslides and wall collapse incidents. The biggest tragedy happened in Raigad district, where several houses were destroyed due to landslides and killed over 30 people. Another massive landslide was reported from Raigad district's Polatpur on Thursday. Over 10 houses were damaged while few others washed away. Several houses were also damaged after landslides triggered by heavy rains in Ambenagar and Meergaon in Satara district. Loss of life was also reported after a building collapsed in Govandi area of Mumbai. Apart from this, several low-lying areas of Kher and Posare have been submerged. Locals are facing major difficulties due to disrupted power supply. Two Indian Air Force helicopters, Mi-17 V5s and Mi-17 have been called in for rescue operations to evacuate those stranded in Ratnagiri's Chiploon and Khed areas. NDRF along with several other organizations are in place to provide immediate relief. More than 14 NDRF teams are on spot at different locations. Another team has been deployed to Polatpur, while 2 teams of Indian Coast Guard and Navy are carrying out rescue operations in Ratnagiri district.
पिछले 2 दिनों से भारी बारिश के कारण महाराष्ट्र में और साउथ इंडिया के अन्य राज्यों में जैसे तेलंगाना, आंध्र, कर्नाटका में बाढ़ की स्थिति आई हुई है। इसको लेकर के एनडीआरएफ की तैनाती हुई है। महाराष्ट्र में हमारी 18 टीमें तैनात हैं। इसके अलावा दूसरे स्टेट्स में भी हमारी रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशंस की कार्रवाई चल रही है।
Several parts of the state, including Raigad, Ratnagiri, Palghar, Thane, Kolhapur and Satara, are facing flood-like situation due to incessant rains. Maharashtra Chief Minister has announced ₹5 lakh ex gratia for the next of kin of those who have died in flood-related incidents in the state. He has also directed officials to provide relief to those affected in the state and took stock of the flood situation in the Ratnagiri and Raigad districts. Chief Minister visited the disaster control room in Mumbai and reviewed situation at several other parts of the state. Earlier on Thursday, Prime Minister spoke to Maharashtra Chief Minister and assured support to mitigate the situation.
केंद्र सरकार से जब कल माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी से और माननीय पंतप्रधान से बात हुई, उन्होंने हर तरह की मदद देने का जो उन्होंने प्रॉमिस किया था, उस तरह से आज नेवी की टीम हो, कोस्टल गार्ड हो या मिलिट्री हो या फिर हर तरह की मदद उन्होंने भेजी है। तो ये बचाव कार्य जो है उन सबके माध्यम से एनडीआरएफ हो, नेवी हो, मिलिट्री हो, कोस्ट गार्ड हो, इनके सबके माध्यम से बचाव काम तेजी से चल रहा है।
Prime Minister also expressed grief on lives lost due to landslide in Raigad and wished speedy recovery to those injured. Prime Minister assured all possible help from the central government to tackle the untoward incident. Moving further south, several parts of Goa, including Satari and Bicholim tehsils in north, are reeling under flood-like situation. Large number of houses were inundated following heavy rains over the past few days. Chief Minister Pramod Sawant inspected rural areas in North Goa, where flood-like situation has emerged after heavy rain over the last 10 days. Telangana is also receiving heavy rain from the last 2 days. Several parts of the state were submerged. People living in low-lying areas of Nizamabad were moved to safer locations by the National Disaster Response Force team. In Karnataka, incessant downpour have crippled normal life in Dharwad district. The adverse effect of heavy rains was seen far and wide in the state. Traffic was also affected on National Highway 4 due to waterlogging. Tanga River is flowing above the danger level mark. With Bureau Inputs, Shishir Shelar's report, DD India.
Now the world is faced with a clear and present danger, that of extreme weather events such as wildfires and floods. Clearly, there's a lot at stake for people everywhere. It seems no country can remain immune from the effects of climate change or global warming. More in the next report.
Large parts of Europe, United States, Turkey, Russia and China are grappling with heavy floods. The world is witnessing a climate emergency. Several parts of the world are under a spell of heavy rain and overflowing rivers since the mid of this month. The countries have seen scores of people and property affected by the floods. Large-scale rescue and cleanup efforts are underway at the battered regions. Many people have lost their lives and many had to vacate their homes to save themselves. United Nations experts and scientists have associated all these extremities to climate change.
Firstly, in the last days, parts of our country have experienced terrible destruction because of flooding. At the moment, we are mourning the loss of 170 people, with people still missing. The cost of the damages still needs to be evaluated, but it is immense. The National Train Service alone has announced the destruction of 600 kilometers worth of train lines. We will need great patience in repairing all this damage.
The United States has been suffering from high temperatures, breaking all records in the history. The largest wildfires in the states has burnt more than 4 lakh acres of land. Evacuations have been going on at a speedy pace to make sure the damage to life and property is as less as possible. Meanwhile, dozens of new fires broke out early this week, setting a new record for the number of wildfires in the region. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has tweeted urging all countries to act swift in a combined effort to combat extreme climate changes. He says, prolonged droughts, wildfires, horrific floods, the climate impacts we see today give us a glimpse of the future unless we limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Every fraction of a degree warming matters. Limiting temperature rise is still possible and crucial if we #act now. Heavy rains have also caused flooding in northeastern Turkey. Village house collapsed and swept away in floodwaters in northeastern Black Sea province of Arhavi. One person was missing and more than 200 people were evacuated from flooded homes. Floods are common along Turkey's Black Sea coastal region at this time of the year. Last week, at least 6 people were killed and 2 others went missing in floodwaters in Black Sea province of Rize. Meanwhile, the G20 climate, environment and energy ministers have kicked off a 2-day meeting in Naples, which is being chaired by Italy. After the catastrophic flood swept across northwest Europe last week and China in recent days, and as wildfires continue to rage across southern Oregon in the United States, energy and climate ministers of the group of the 20 rich and emerging nations are meeting to try to increase emission cuts and climate finance pledges. World Today Desk, DD India.
Right, and joining me for more on this developing story to talk about the intersection of disasters and climate change is Mr. R.R. Rashmi, Distinguished Fellow, the Energy and Resources Institute, New Delhi, and a former Special Secretary in the Ministry of Environment, Government of India. Mr. Rashmi, welcome to News Night. Now, we are talking about the report mentioned about extreme weather events, be it in China, parts of Europe, or even India for that matter. Is climate change a factor, you think?
Yes, absolutely. These catastrophic events are clear evidence that the climate is changing seriously and disastrously for us. And the planet is going through one of the worst moments that we have seen so far in the history. In fact, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon used to call it the tipping point. So we have reached the tipping point. And if once we cross this, then it's a point of no return. So we need to act quickly and decisively now itself. What are the actions? It's clear that the whole world, not just the developing world, which used to be affected by the climate change in the past, now you can see this kind of disasters taking place even in the developed world. So it's a very clear indication that the climate is changing, the weather patterns are changing irretrievably and significantly all over the world. And they are going to cause huge damage to the established patterns of living that we have. And of course, in the process of our development, we have damaged the environment very, very substantially. and climate change is a result of that damage, just like other environmental problems of biodiversity degradation, degradation of land, degradation of water, air. Climate change is also one of the results of the way we have fiddled with our local and global environment. We need to take actions, and these floods which are occurring all over the world because of rains which are extremely high and erratic in nature, because nobody had anticipated this kind of downpour in such a short time. This is the characteristic signature of these extreme events, that they happen without notice in a totally unanticipated manner. And what is it that the world can do about countering these disasters? It is only by engaging the society with the environment in which we live. We must take sustainable developmental actions to be able to control the climate, because the climate has, it has been adversely affected, and it will take decades, if not centuries, to come back to its original position. So we must act now to stabilize the climate, because a long time will pass before these damages can be fully reversed.
Absolutely. And very quickly, Mr. Rashmi, a twofold question. Now, we are looking ahead to the COP26 summit to be held in Glasgow later this year. And the G7 and G20 have spoken about this issue for the last many months now. Your expectations from that summit, number one, and number two, how do you look at India's contribution or initiatives in this direction?
Well, as far as COP26 is concerned, the global goals of the COP26, it is a UN, United Nations meeting, where all the participating countries which are signatories to the Paris Agreement and to the United Nations Convention, they will all gather together to decide what further actions are required. Now, in the 2015, when the Paris Agreement was signed, all countries had promised that they will cut their emissions substantially to be able to stabilize the climate as early as possible. No time frame was set, but the goal was set. The goal was that the world must act to stabilize the climate within the range of 2 degrees above the pre-industrial level. And so it was just the level that was decided, but no timeline was fixed. So now there is a pressure, that now there is a requirement that the timeline should be fixed. The kind of the level of cuts in the emissions which the countries must achieve, that should be set. And the developed world has to take lead in this. They must show demonstrable actions that they are taking significant cuts. Unfortunately, in the last 20 years, which is an evidence, unfortunately, the emissions across the world, and more so in the developed world, has risen very highly. Instead of cutting their emissions, the developed countries are adding more and more emissions. So they continue to be large. For example, I don't want to name any particular countries. All the major developed countries haven't reduced their emissions as much as they should have as per the Kyoto Protocol or as per the UN Convention. And even under the Paris Agreement, the NDC which they have set for themselves, we don't see much progress. We only see a long-term goal. For example, European Union has said that they will reduce their emissions by 55% by 2030. But
and Mr. Rashmi, very quickly, if you don't mind, how do you look at India's contribution or initiatives to combat climate change?
India has taken very significant and positive action. In fact, if you look at the NDC of India, there are 3 clear goals of reducing emissions intensity by 30 to 35%, and we have already achieved 24% reduction as per the data achieved in 2016. And we have 10 more years to go. And in terms of energy production, from renewable sector, or which is one of the goals, that we must set up at least 40% of our total energy production from renewable by 2030. We have already achieved almost 36% in terms of renewable capacity. So India is making substantial progress amongst the G20 countries. India is one of the top, in fact, India is the top country which is aligned fully well with the 2-degree goal. No other country has this rank. So India's track record is very good.
Indeed.
But what India has to do is to support its actions much more with the financial resources and technology which only developed world can provide.
Right. Right. On that note, Mr. Rashmi, thank you for sharing your insights with our viewers on Newsnight. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right, moving on. Now, India is the first country that Maldives Foreign Minister Abdullah Shahid is visiting in his capacity as a president-elect of the United Nations General Assembly after he was elected to the post on 7th June. He called on Prime Minister Modi and held talks with his Indian counterpart, External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar. My colleague Amrit Pal Singh reports.
The 76th UNGA President-elect and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Maldives, Abdullah Shahid, shared his vision for UNGA presidency through a virtual public address titled Presidency of Hope, COVID Pandemic and Need for Reformed Multilateralism. Shahid listed economic recovery in the wake of the devastation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change and rebuilding sustainably and reformed multilateralism as his priorities.
To look towards building back better, we need to look towards building back stronger and bluer. Building on existing initiatives and approaches, I will be looking to address the health of our people and our economies and work to ensure vaccine equity. We need to vaccinate the entire world.
Noting that his presidency of the United Nations would also have a number of key events on climate change like the 26th UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties or COP26 in Glasgow, a conference on the oceans and another on desertification, Shahid hoped that the international community could send out a strong message on arresting the negative impacts of climate change.
Our home, our planet, must be addressed as a matter of urgency. COVID-19 has not replaced the challenges of climate change, ocean health, desertification, and land degradation and loss of biodiversity. In fact, it has limited the scope for addressing these challenges as limited resources have been diverted towards the pandemic. But the impacts of climate change are worsening. At a glance at this month's headlines, heat waves, floods, tidal waves, these are all signs of climate emergency. The 76th session can be a super session for nature, with multiple conferences and meetings such as COP26 on climate change, the Ocean Conference, COP15 on biodiversity, COP15 on desertification, the Energy Dialogue, conferences on sustainable transport and food systems. There is momentum on responding to the needs of our planet.
In response to questions posed to him, Shahid agreed that the current composition of the UN Security Council was not reflective of the current global realities. He said he would appoint a panel to ensure that the work on reforming the UNSC that was done in the 75th session of the UNGA would be carried on under the 76th session under him. On terrorism, Shahid said that he would work towards ensuring an agreement on the definition of terrorism, which he described as pure evil, having no borders, no religion and no soul. Abdullah Shahid also called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In a tweet, the Prime Minister said, "Delighted to meet President-elect of the 76th UNGA and FM of Maldives, His Excellency Abdullah Shahid. I wish him all success during his presidency of hope." Also reiterated India's commitment to Maldives as a key pillar of our neighborhood first policy. He also held a bilateral meeting with External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. An MOU on high-impact community development projects was inked between India and Maldives. With Amrit Pal, Bureau Report, DD India.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit India on 27th and 28th July. This will be his first visit to the country after assuming charge as U.S. Secretary of State under Joe Biden's administration. Blinken will meet and call on Prime Minister Modi, External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar, and also National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, among others, during his stay in India. India views Blinken's visit as an opportunity to continue the high-level bilateral dialogue and bolster India-US global strategic partnership. According to the MEA, both sides will review the robust and multifaceted India-US bilateral relations and potential for consolidating them further. The talks will focus on regional and global issues of mutual interest, including recovery from COVID-19 pandemic, the Indo-Pacific region, Afghanistan, and cooperation in the UN. Blinken in a tweet said, and I quote, "On July 26, I'll depart for New Delhi, India and Kuwait City, Kuwait. This trip will underscore the importance of our cooperation on topics like COVID-19 response efforts, shared security interests, and the climate crisis. I look forward to strengthening our important partnerships," unquote. Another news from the Indian Parliament, where issues such as Pegasus spyware and farm laws disrupted proceedings in both houses of Parliament. The Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha were adjourned for the day following ruckus by the opposition. And week one of the monsoon session of Parliament has been a complete washout due to repeated adjournments.
The Pegasus snooping, farm laws and other issues marked the proceedings in both the houses of the parliament. Both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha adjourned for the day following ruckus by opposition. With this, the first week of the monsoon session was washed out to adjournments. First, talking about Rajya Sabha, due to repeated disruptions, the upper house adjourned for the day on Friday and the house could not transact any business. TMC MP Shantanu Sen was suspended from Rajya Sabha by the chairman for the remaining period of the monsoon session. The proposal to suspend TMC MP Shantanu Sen was moved by the Minister of Parliamentary Affairs in the House, which was accepted by the Chairman Venkaiah Naidu, terming his action as undemocratic.
Sir, I move that Dr. Shantanu Sen, AATC, be suspended from the services of the House for the remaining part of the current session for his unruly behavior, unbecoming of a member of Rajya Sabha yesterday, the 22nd July 2021. By snatching the copy of the statement from the Minister of Railways, Minister of Communications and Minister of Electronics and Information Technology, tearing and throwing it towards the chair, thereby bringing disrepute to this august House.
Unfortunately, the proceedings of House hit a new low with the papers being snatched from the Minister and torn into pieces and thrown into the air. Such actions are in a clear assault of our parliamentary democracy.
After presenting statement in Lok Sabha on Monday, IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav on Thursday attempted to give a statement on the spyware Pegasus in the Rajya Sabha. As he began speaking, TMC MP Shantanu Sen snatched the minister's copy of the statement and tore it into pieces. The Treasury bench objected and condemned Sen's act.
सड़क पर सिर फोड़ते हैं, सदन में कागज फाड़ते हैं, सवाल उठाते हैं लेकिन जवाब सुनने को तैयार नहीं होते। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी को अपने मंत्रिमंडल के नए सहयोगियों का परिचय नहीं करवाने देते, मंत्री को सदन में जवाब नहीं देने देते। आखिरकार विपक्ष की मंशा क्या है?
तृणमूल कांग्रेस ने भारतीय जनता पार्टी के कार्यकर्ताओं पे जिस तरह का वायलेंस किया है बंगाल में, उसी कल्चर को आज पार्लियामेंट में लेके आ रहे हैं। मेरा सीधा सा प्रश्न है, हम देश को, हमारी नेक्स्ट जनरेशन पार्लियामेंटेरियंस को, उनको क्या संदेश देना चाहते हैं?
25 bills were listed to be tabled in the Rajya Sabha on Friday, including bills on population, uniform civil code and women's reservation. But due to opposition's unrelenting attitude, not a single bill could be introduced in the House. At the same time, a uproar of opposition continued in the Lok Sabha on Friday, which disrupted House proceedings. However, during the question hour, Union Health Minister informed the House that government is moving forward in achieving the target of vaccination for all.
सरकार ने वैक्सीनेशन का अभियान, देश के 7% नागरिक को वैक्सीनेशन हो, इसके लिए मोदी जी ने जो अभियान चलाया है, मेरा आग्रह है हम सब लोग साथ में मिलकर वैक्सीनेशन में सहयोग करें। हम सब लोग साथ में मिलकर जहां वैक्सीनेशन केंद्र चालू हो, टीकाकरण चालू हो, वहां जाए, उसको प्रोत्साहित करें।
When the lower house resumed at noon, important papers were tabled, but due to ruckus, the proceedings of the House had to be adjourned for the day. Union Shipping Minister Sarbanand Sonowal introduced the Inland Vessel Bill 2021 in the Lok Sabha amid noisy scenes. In the meantime, Minister of State for Defence Ajay Bhatt also introduced the Defence Services Bill 2021. Amid challenges of COVID-19, the monsoon session of Parliament began on Monday with many hopes and expectations. But an unrelenting opposition meant that almost no legislative work could be done. And now all eyes are on the coming week. Will the opposition parties call for a truce, allowing legislative work to proceed? Parliament Team, DD India.
The Jammu and Kashmir police has averted a cross-border terror plot by shooting down a drone carrying an improvised explosive device material weighing 5 kilograms in the border belt of Jammu district on Friday. My colleague Neeraj Singh reports.
The Jammu and Kashmir police has successfully foiled a major terror plot. Security forces shot down a drone in Akhnoor, just 8 kilometers short of the international border. 5 kilograms of IED have been seized along with the drone. According to the police, the drone was likely being used to supply explosive material to terrorists.
पिछले 1.5 साल में तकरीबन 25 से 30 ड्रोन सॉर्टीज का सामान हमने जब्त किया है, चाहे वो मौके पे जब्त किया हो, चाहे वो ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के दौरान जब्त किया हो, और कई लोगों को इसमें गिरफ्तार भी किया गया है। इससे ये पता चला इनकी जो पूछताछ के दौरान कि जैश और लश्कर ये दो तंजीमें हैं जो ड्रोन के जरिए वेपन्स और आईडीज गिरा रही हैं।
The police received information that terror outfit Jaish-e-Mohammed was planning to drop a payload near Akhnoor using a drone, after which they immediately got into action and shot down the drone. According to initial reports, the device was a hexacopter with a flight controller and GPS. The serial number on the flight controller of the drone was in sequence with the serial number found on the drone shot down in Kathua a year ago. This clearly indicates that multiple flight controllers of the same series were purchased in Pakistan and are now being sent via different drones. The drone was assembled using parts from China, Taiwan and Hong Kong.
Right, take a look at what else is making news around India in our National Roundup segment.
Union Agriculture and Farmers Welfare Minister Narendra Singh Tomar said that the government is fully committed to the development of farmers and majority of them are in favour of the reforms. He added that the government is ready for talks if anyone has some issue. Uttar Pradesh government has issued appointment letters to 6,696 assistant teachers of the Basic Education Department under Mission Employment Series. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath asserted that strengthening basic education will help in building a prosperous and powerful nation. Leader of opposition in West Bengal Assembly and BJP MLA Suvendu Adhikari met Union Home Minister Amit Shah in New Delhi on Friday. After the meeting, Adhikari said that post-poll violence in the state is still going on and informed the Home Minister about the prevailing situation in the state. Navjot Singh Sidhu, the newly appointed president of the Punjab Pradesh Congress Committee on Friday, formally took charge at a ceremony with Chief Minister Amarinder Singh joining the event and congratulating him.
And with that, it's a wrap, but news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. We leave you with these visuals of the Tokyo Olympics. Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
जोश है तेरे साथ तिरंगा है ये विजय का उद्घोष है तू ठान ले अब जीत को अंजाम दे